Confucius and brightening bright virtue. Tiankong Tran, Ph.D. The purpose of the great learning is to brighten bright virtue. We speak of the way and virtue. The way is the way of man. Virtue is the way man realizes or the way realized in man. So, virtue is the synonym of the way. Virtue is used to indicate the way when we think about the realization of the way. But the way can be good or bad. Virtue is used to indicate the good way. What is the good way and what is the bad way? Man lives or dwells. And man aims at a peaceful dwelling. A peaceful dwelling resides in man's heart. What does peace mean here? Peace means security or protection from harms, and humanity is accomplished. A man in his peaceful dwelling can realize his essence as a man. What contributes to the peaceful dwelling is good and what harms the peaceful dwelling is bad. Confucius calls the good way virtue and bright virtue. Why is virtue bright virtue? Bright expresses the domain of lightness. What is the domain of lightness? The domain of lightness is the domain out of darkness. In darkness we do not see anything, or we see a thing in a wrong or bad manner. The domain of lightness is the domain in which we see. And here seeing is seeing all things. The domain of lightness is the domain in which we see all things, or the domain in which all things appear. Bright virtue is the way or virtue in which all things appear to man. In the history of human thought, the way has been spoken of as fire, the sun, halo. The way is the light in which things come into existence. Man, everyone, daily sees things. This is a fact, which does not need to be proved. Therefore, man daily lives in bright virtue. Talking about bright virtue is talking about something appearing to us daily. Bright virtue is not something invented by the sages. Being a man is living in bright virtue. The way is not something strange to man, the way is within man. There is the fact that things appear, this fact is out of doubt. Things appear in some domain or sphere. There is the fact that things appear, therefore, there is the domain in which things appear. Right now, we do not determine what is this domain, we only say that there is that domain. Things appear or come into existence in some domain. Confucius calls this domain the way or virtue. The way or virtue is the name of the domain or sphere in which things come into existence or appear to man. But if bright virtue appears daily already to man, why do we talk about brightening bright virtue? Virtue is naturally bright, why do we need brightening? We need brightening because bright virtue is not bright. Why is bright virtue not bright? Because of bright virtue, we see things. However, when we see things, we forget bright virtue. Bright virtue appears to us, and things appear to us. These two appearances occur at the same time. However, we pay attention only to the appearance of things. Being human beings, we see things and forget bright virtue. Man, daily lives in bright virtue and daily forgets bright virtue. Therefore, bright virtue is not bright daily. Bright in Bright Virtue speaks of the use of bright virtue. Virtue is the domain in which things appear. It does not say that virtue is daily bright to man. It is possible to call fallenness the fact that man does not daily see bright virtue. Man lives daily in fallenness. Man, daily sees things only and forgets bright virtue. In human condition is this ignorance. Being a man is seeing the sun rise in the east and set in the west. Being a man is seeing the sun turn around the earth. But this was a time when somebody said that the earth turns around the sun. Being a man is seeing things alone. But there was a time when somebody said that there is bright virtue. There is bright virtue, and this bright virtue is different from things. Bright virtue and a thing, matter, material, are two different realities, even though they appear at the same time. Because man daily lives in bright virtue and at the same time does not see it, it is possible to say that bright virtue appears and remains hidden at the same time. Appearing and remaining hidden at the same time is an important quality of bright virtue. Therefore, there is the task of brightening bright virtue. If there is no hiddenness of bright virtue, there is no brightening. When Confucius talks about brightening bright virtue, he knows the hiddenness of the way. He knows that man lives daily in fallenness or forgetting the way, even though the way always appears to man. Man lives daily in fallenness or far from the way. The way does not appear evidently in front. In other words, the way appears mysteriously. That is the reason why we can say it is in the hidden, in the secret and in the minute that we find the way. We talk about depth, delicateness, because the way resides in those places. The doctrine of the mean says, there is nothing more visible than what is secret, there is nothing more manifest than what is minute. Hence, the superior man is cautious when he is alone. The secret is the way. But it always appears to man. If we see correctly, the way is the most visible. There are so many things and at one moment only a few of them appear to man. But the way appears all the time. That is the reason why we can say, there is nothing more visible than what is secret. In a thing, it is material that appears as the full and the way appears as the minute. Material brings a complication that is difficult to understand. Wood appears there, but what is it and where is it from? On the contrary, the way appears and there is nothing behind it. That is the reason why we can say, there is nothing more manifest than what is minute. The superior man is alone, that means he is far from the crowd, far from the fallenness of the crowd. To be far from the fallenness of the crowd is to be near to the way. Alone indicates near to the way. When the superior man is alone or far from the multitude or near to the way, that is when he is not careless, or he is watchful over himself. It is where people do not see, it is where people do not hear that the way is present. Therefore, the superior man carefully pays attention to, worries about the place that is not seen and heard. The place that is seen and heard is one of material alone. The way is present in the other place. That is the reason why it may be said that a philosopher is strange or queer. It is so because the way is not an ordinary thing. An ordinary thing, a material thing, is not the way. A philosopher is a traveler in this world. An ordinary person also carries in himself a little of the way. That is why he also tends to like something strange, wild, and obscure. He sometimes dreams of a certain nothingness, a certain void space. But a danger may happen, there is a false nothingness, a false void space, and it is able to attract him. The way appears and a thing appears. Man lives in the way as well as in things. Man does not often forget things, he often forgets the way. The way does not appear outside a thing. It appears only in a thing. A thing is the place of the appearance of the way. When man realizes the way, he realizes it in a thing or lets it appear in a thing. Brightening bright virtue is brightening bright virtue in a thing, or, more correctly, in man's relation to a thing. Man brightens bright virtue when he sees it in a thing. But does a thing need bright virtue? Man daily sees things. It seems that he does not need to see bright virtue to see things. He does not need to brighten bright virtue. Is bright virtue not a product invented by sages or philosophers? As it is said that bright virtue appears so that a thing can appear. Bright virtue is not a product invented by sages or philosophers. Bright virtue is always within man, even though man daily forgets it. It is known that even a man forgets bright virtue, he still sees things, but if he sees bright virtue, he will see things in a different manner. Indeed, if a person sees a thing, he sees it in a certain bright virtue. Bright virtue may appear true and even as untrue. But with bright virtue we often aim at true bright virtue in its utmost sense. Therefore, a thing which appears to man not in brightened bright virtue may be different from a thing which appears to man in a brightened bright virtue. So, a very important task is to brighten bright virtue. After having brightened bright virtue, we are able to show people the difference between a thing appearing to man not in brightened bright virtue and a thing appearing to man in a brightened bright virtue. So, what is bright virtue?